Greg Masters, Managing Editor of SC Magazine, and we're pleased to welcome John McClurg, the VP and CSO at Dell. John has a deep background. He's been with the FBI, CIA, Homeland Security, and then on to Lucent and what was it? Honeywell, thank you, John. And we're talking trends today. We're a few months into 2013. We've been seeing a lot of headlines about breaches, about China, nation-state attacks. So we just want to get your take with your background working at all levels of government and now with vendors. What possible measures can a corporation today take to defend its IT structure against adversaries who could be nation-state, could be out for financial gain?
Well,
what chance?
That's a very interesting question. I mean, given the times in which we live, they're so daunting. The chaos is rampant. Levels of complexity are soaring. Each of us, regardless of the company we sit in different silos or sectors, and not all the sectors have the same threat vectors coming at them. So we're all positioned a little differently. We don't all want to spend the same amount of money to protect our interests. So what it really does demand of us that we sit back, regardless of where we sit, and evaluate, where our IP exists, and assess and understand what it is we can tolerate when it comes to losses, and that we understand accurately the probability of the threat that's posed against us. Clearly, a threat can present itself as a possibility, a probability, or an actuality. As a professional, I'd love to have the resources, the time and energy to do battle with that full spectrum. That would be really fun. Pragmatically speaking, in today's markets, you just don't ever have the budget for that. And that's if you're a large corporation or even a smaller mom and pop shop, you just don't have those resources. So you're going to have to get intelligent and stay focused. Starting off probably with those actual threats posed against you. And my inclination generally, as you think about the risk posed against an asset that you value, is understanding that risk usually comes in terms of either some threat actor or because of a vulnerability that you've allowed to come into your environment or is characteristic of the product we're stealing. My inclination is generally to try and focus on that I can control more, and that's that vulnerability. The threat vectors externally you can't always control as much, but the vulnerabilities you can, and to stay focused and to work there. So that would be the starting point. Then looking for ways, given the limited budgets that many of us have, is to way to force multiply in as economically intelligent way as possible. So even at Dell, I've got what I call a lean internal indigenous team, but what I try and do is establish around that a constellation of trusted partners, the cost of which I don't have to bear completely because I've got other partners, other CSOs, other companies that will engage those partners as well and help foot the bill for that. But that enables me to engage a level of sophistication and support that I couldn't really afford to foot the bill for alone. So those sort of techniques are what I recommend that we consider in advance as we look at the complexity and the threats that are out there.
Okay. China, for example, is a big market that we want to continue to do business with and build our business relationships with, and yet we know, or we have at least circumstantial evidence that they are behind a great number of cyber attacks, stealing intellectual property from the U.S. And it's not just China. Obviously, any nation can be doing this.
Yeah, that goes to what I often characterize as the conundrum aspect of doing business in the global marketplace. We know we have to be in China. There's a lot of opportunity for our shareholders and the value we can generate there. We also know that it is a different environment. They do have and you may have heard of the 1993 state security law that was passed almost 20 years ago in China that basically in its nature obligates every Chinese citizen to cooperate with the Chinese government on matters of state security, which would include conceptually economic security. And the being able to play what I call that 93 card is an unusual circumstances that most corporations would be a little puzzled as to how do you actually protect against that possibility, which now summons forth and champions the idea of finally getting smart and intelligent about the way in which we're going to enclave our networks, the way we're going to identify where our critical intellectual property truly resides, who needs access to it in order to really advance it and develop it, and how do we then protect it both at rest and in motion as we move to, bring your own device, a more mobile workplace that needs access to that IP? What are the strategies we can put in place to allow that access while at the same time protecting it against these adversarial forces that we know now are out there?
Okay.
Yeah.
And before the tape started rolling, we were talking about physical and logical. And you have a lot of background in that, working with the FBI. I know of a case where you were involved. So how is that playing out these days?
Well, in fact, that gave way to, as I was in my early days working at the model where we converge the physical and cyber security programs that we have in an integrated manner under one umbrella, so as to lessen the chance that we could inadvertently overlook an interdependency, so that a physical vulnerability undermines a cyber interest, or a cyber vulnerability undermines a physical interest. And so in fact, that's one of the new initiatives we've been advancing at Dell, is a converged house. It's the same structure and model that I advanced at Honeywell and at Lucent. But I think it pre-positions you a little better to anticipate and to engage the way in which the threats are presenting themselves. Speaking of that complexity, that's no small part of that complexity.
So my thanks to John McClurg for coming in.
Thank you.
Pleasure meeting you. Thank you.